Hello, I'm Reed Fleming from Street Hope in St. John, New Brunswick, and I've been a longtime friend of Tim's. We knew each other before we had gray hair, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of my experiences with evangelism. I've been at this evangelism stuff for a long time, and I've learned some things, hopefully, and maybe there's a nugget or two in here that would be useful to you. One of the things that I have come to really trust in is a scripture verse that from John that says, Jesus speaking, "My sheep know my voice." And it encourages me that I can hear from him. And I think that this is the key for evangelism, because we can spend a lot of energy, and I've done that over the years, a lot of energy and a lot of effort that is like the picture of the sower of the seed that just casts the seed about. And I guess that's a kind of a biblical picture, but I don't think it's really good agriculture. And that's not the way we practice it today. But instead we look to prepare soil, and we look for good opportunities, and where there are people who might be open to hearing the good news of Jesus Christ. And so I believe in listening to Jesus. And so the way that I do that oftentimes is I walk and I listen. And when this kind of happened to me, first, when we started, I was invited to do inner city mission in St. John. And I walked the neighborhood, and I walked for weeks, just kind of, it wasn't intentional like I was praying every moment, but I was listening for God, and I was looking for God. And what could be my ministry? What's the way into this neighborhood where I'm really not a part right now? And so as I walked and as I prayed, I was led, just had this nudge to start counting dryer vents on the sides of the buildings. And as I did, there were so very few. And I thought, well, that's kind of funny. And I began then, just having heard from the Spirit, count these dryer vents. What a bizarre thing to kind of think. But I acted on it. And then I began to ask people, because I assumed that God had revealed this for a purpose. I began to ask people, so what do you do with your laundry? What do there don't seem to be very many laundry rooms in these rooming houses that I'm walking by. And what I learned was that people wore their clothes until they couldn't stand them anymore, and they threw them out. And they went to a John Howard, or they went to the Vincent de Paul, and they got some more clothes, and that kept them going. And I just remember being struck in my heart and thinking, there isn't a lot of dignity in that. And so I cobbled together a little laundry room in the basement of our church. I found some borrowed, we did some plumbing and borrowed some old washers and dryers, and what happened was that people would come, and we would sit with them as they did the laundry, and we got to know people, and they got to know us, and over time we came to have a relationship with one another, and over a period of time, people heard the good news, and we began a new congregation in that church that was made up of people. We called it Uptown, made up of people who we first met through the laundry ministry, and it became a great evangelistic tool. Now, it all begins with listening to God's voice, acting on it, and thinking, what are the ways that we can add value, kingdom value, to this? Because, I mean, there's a certain value in washing people's dirty clothes and giving them some dignity. That's important. And I would never diminish that. That's important. But as well, we had a hope that we wanted to share, a Jesus that we wanted to share with people because we discovered real hope in him. So that became a really effective tool for us. And it starts with this listening and looking and identifying a niche that we could fill. There's lots of things that we can't do. I mean, my little ministry that we're involved with is not a rich one at all. They're much bigger ministries with greater budgets than ours, and so we don't have the capacity to feed the hungry or house the people who are without homes. Those things happen on kind of a macro scale, but we want to look at micro ways to touch people and touch people's lives. And so I encourage you in this. There's no kind of we're too small for this. There's a niche for us. God has created this listening with an eye to ministry. So we're mixing our metaphors between listening and seeing, but the both are true, that we listen with an eye to seeing opportunities for ministry, and then in seeing them, then we're seizing them and we're adding value to them. So the laundry room was a good example. And as we had our little congregation and we were growing in love for God and in love for one another, and the numbers were ticking up as well, we decided that we wanted to have an outreach around Christmas time. Everybody has an outreach. It seems like a time where people are open, and we want to take advantage of that. And so I began to pray, Father, what kind of ministry, what's the niche for us here? And so I began to talk to people, and as winter was coming along, we were talking to people about their living quarters, how they lived, and many people lived in rooming houses where the light and heat was included, but the heat mostly came in the summertime, and in unbearable kind of temperatures in these airless rooms, but they were also cold places during the winter months, and people would complain to their landlords and get no satisfaction, like the Rolling Stones, I guess. And so we came up with a scheme to hand out 100 electric blankets to people who would come to our Christmas breakfast. And so Christmas Day we had a breakfast, and we had it was opulent, better than I eat on a Christmas morning, but we wanted to treat people well. And so they came, and each person that came for breakfast left with an electric blanket. And the stories of these folks and how they would wangle extension cords, and they would go around their whole house with this blanket wrapped around them in the cozy warmth of that as they went from bed to sitting and eating their breakfast and on. And so we brought warmth. But as well, we had an opportunity to share the good news about Jesus and really share the message of Christmas at this breakfast, the Word made flesh. So we found a little niche, and so there was lots of ministries going on, but we were the one that were giving away electric blankets. And so we heard a need, said, Father, is this something that we can seize upon? And then we take action looking at ways to add value, kingdom value. And so it's kind of an entrepreneurial exercise. This isn't standing on a soapbox on a street corner and crying out to people, trying to recreate a John the Baptist on the streets of Edmonton or St. John, but is looking for niches where we can meet actual people, engage in relational life with them, bless them in some way, but bless them as well with the good news of Jesus Christ. We created a safe drop-in for people who realize that sometimes the streets of St. John and the inner city after dark aren't that safe a place to be. And if you live in a rooming house, you don't want to stay in that 24/7. You need to get out. And the places that people generally would get out would be the pubs and the bars and that kind of scene. And they're not really pretty. They're not family places in the inner city. And so we want to create a place where people could come, have a cup of coffee, have whatever snacks we could kind of wrangle up during the week, and to play games and to talk and visit. And so we did that, and we had a great crowd begin to come out to that every Friday night. And then besides the chats, people started to call for, Reed, why don't you share more about the faith? Why don't you do a little study in the midst of this? Well, I didn't want to make it where, in order to get the coffee and to have the warmth and the fellowship and the safety, that you had to listen to me. But it kind of bubbled up. And so we began what we called the word from our sponsor. And so at halftime, I would give a warning. And those who didn't want to would take the opportunity to go out for a smoke or to go to the washroom or something. And I would just give like a 2-minute kind of, just sometimes it'd be a thought, a Bible. So you could do something as easy as reading from Daily Bread. But then the conversations afterwards centered on that. And it was nice. And those became interactive over time as people would ask me questions in the midst of that. We saw that I was reading Romans chapter 1 one day and my devotions, and I saw in there it said there's enough evidence in nature that people are without excuse for not recognizing God's divine power and nature. And I thought, well, my friends in the inner city don't have the same opportunity. I've been to Niagara Falls. I've been in the Rockies. I've been to Hopewell Rocks. I've seen God's beauty evidenced in nature in some wonderful ways. But my friends had seen the sunset behind the tenement building across the street. The only rainbow that they'd seen is in a mud puddle on the sidewalk. And so we said, how can we get people out into nature? And so we began to take people to a Christian camp. And then that turned into what we call Roman holidays. And we take people on day trips. And during those trips, there's a lot of interaction. And people see nature. And we're always able to say, isn't God wonderful? And we've had people who've asked some serious questions and made some serious strides forward in their life because they've seen God in nature through our Roman holidays, and before that with our Deer Island camp trips. Not so long ago, we put on I have a brother-in-law who's a gourmet chef, and he put on for us a great meal, a summer meal. It was a Southwestern themed meal, and we called it a fandango. And people came, and everyone that left, I spoke earlier about the hot and the airless rooms. Everybody who left that day took an electric fan with them. And we were able to talk. I spent a lot of time talking to people about the winds of God, to feel the winds of God today. And so we found ways to meet a need little niche need, something that we could raise support for. That we don't have deep pockets, but we found ways that excited people and pointed them towards Jesus. And now we're starting in a new venture. Here I am. I thought I was ready to retire. I had a very bad back, and I was just thinking I was useless to God. And I was surprised by a healing that I received from that, and I thought, well, God must have a kind of another chapter for me. And so we had been working a lot in the inner city for the last 20 years, and I see that the greatest problem in the inner city centers around addiction, child poverty and violence and all sorts of other things spin off, but addictions is the heart of things. And so I began again to say to God, what little niche could we fit in this? We can't be a big rehab center. That's not who we are. It's not our expertise. It's not what we can do. But what we can do is to provide a Christian community that people who have been through a Christian rehab program can come to. And our vision is to take people who found hope in Jesus, solidly found hope in Jesus, and equip them, just as we're being equipped as lay evangelists, equip them to be evangelists, people who not only have hope, but can give hope. So that what we're doing is we're in the midst of this renovations to start Threshold House, which will become a ministry of discipleship in the context of Christian living, just the way I was discipled in many ways, in Christian living, and equipping people to be the voice of change in their own communities. And so we'll have a cohort of people who come through and live with us for a year and become equipped to share that hope effectively in their community, followed by another cohort, until over time we're having an outsized impact on our community and the problems of addiction. And so we're finding how to, in small ways, leverage big change. And I think that's the key for my ministry, and that what I recommend is to find ways that you can leverage your gifts and your talents in small ways to make big change, so that we're like a stone thrown into a pond, and the effect ripples out and out and out from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the uttermost parts of the world. Well, I was told to keep this under 20 minutes, and we're just at about that. So I'm going to close it off and hope that this in some ways has blessed you today. I so enjoy the ministry of evangelism, and to see others come to know Jesus, and to see others begin to share effectively the good news of Jesus just excites me. And I hope that same feeling is yours now and in the years ahead in your ministry. God bless you all. Take care.